Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. The featured novel we are interpreting for you in this issue is The Grapes of Wrath, which is the representative work of John Steinbeck, an American writer and Nobel laureate in literature. Born in 1902 in a middle-class family in California, Steinbeck had a passion for literature from a young age. Later, he dropped out of Stanford University and went to New York, where he worked in the journalism industry for a while. He then returned to his hometown and devoted himself fully to literary creation. In 1936, Steinbeck accepted a commission from the San Francisco News to write a series of reports on migrant labor in the Salinas Valley of California, and conducted extensive field investigations and interviews. In October of that year, Steinbeck published a series of articles titled The Harvest Gypsies, some of which became the source material for his future work, The Grapes of Wrath. The Grapes of Wrath was published in 1939 and tells the story of the hardships faced by farmers in various states in the American Midwest. The main plot of the novel revolves around the Joad family, sharecroppers from Oklahoma, who are forced to become migrants and head to California in search of a better life but face numerous challenges. With this work, Steinbeck became one of the masters of American modern literature. In 1962, the Swedish Academy awarded him the Nobel Prize in Literature for his realistic and imaginative writing, with a keen social conscience and a sympathetic sense of humor. Let's first briefly understand the background of the creation of The Grapes of Wrath. After the collapse of the U.S. stock market in 1929, it triggered over a decade of economic crisis, leading to an unprecedented mass unemployment. To make matters worse, during the same period, large areas of the southern United States suffered from severe wind erosion and dust storms. Thousands of farmers who had settled there faced bankruptcy and had to leave their homes in search of new opportunities. In such a backdrop, American literature produced a large number of social protest novels that aimed to record some social phenomena of the time and let mainstream readers understand the hardships of the lower classes. In just over a decade, the number of such novels exceeded 100, and The Grapes of Wrath is one of the representative works. The Grapes of Wrath achieved tremendous success upon its publication but also sparked intense controversy. The Farmers Association of Kern County, California, led the accusation that the conditions depicted in the novel did not match the facts. Some official institutions in Kansas City listed the novel as banned and even called for the burning of existing copies. In contrast, the attitude in Oklahoma was somewhat ambiguous. On the one hand, local newspapers extensively reported on the unfair treatment of The Grapes of Wrath in other states, and the sales of the book skyrocketed, becoming the most popular novel after Gone with the Wind, with even people who had never read a book in their lives rushing to buy a copy. On the other hand, there were voices in Oklahoma trying to refute Steinbeck, stating that not all farmers in the state lived as difficult lives as the Joad family portrayed, and that the region was not only filled with dust storms and barren land. Regardless of the standpoint, these people more or less overlooked the literary achievements of the novel itself. Nowadays, people are increasingly realizing that, beyond the main storyline of realism, The Grapes of Wrath focuses more on the complex relationship between humanity, technology, and nature. The impact of the changing production structure portrayed in the novel still resonates with contemporary readers. Part 1. The novel begins by depicting the harsh natural landscape of Oklahoma, capturing the dust, storms, and scorching sun through a cinematic wide-angle lens. No one can work in such an environment, and the sharecroppers can only helplessly hide in their houses, watching their crops wither on the cracked land. At this time, Tom Joad enters the scene, one of the main characters of the novel. He walks along a road and approaches a resting truck driver outside a roadside diner, requesting a ride. Through their conversation, we learn that Tom was recently released from prison after committing manslaughter and is heading back home. On his way home, Tom coincidentally encounters the former preacher, Jim Casey. Casey, lost in his own confusion, has given up his clergy position. The two travel together toward Tom's family's farm. To their shock, they find that Tom's small farm has been destroyed, and his family members are nowhere to be found. In fact, All the neighboring sharecroppers have left because the land has been taken over by the banks. The labor of 12 or 13 families can be replaced by a single tractor driver, causing the farmers to lose their land overnight. Only one person, named Muley, refuses to leave. He has abandoned his family and wanders around nearby, eventually encountering Tom, who has returned home early. Muley tells him that their family has gone to Uncle John's place, 8 miles away. That night, Tom and the others hide in a cornfield, as the police patrol the area, assisting the big corporations in guarding their property. The next day, Tom Joad and Jim Casey find the rest of the Joad family, Grandpa and Grandma, Tom's parents, Pa and Ma Joad, Tom's 2 brothers, Noah and Al, Tom's pregnant sister, Rose of Sharon, and her husband, Connie, as well as the young Winfield and Ruthie. They are in the process of selling their belongings and packing up, preparing for a self-driven journey to California in search of work. California holds all their hopes as the Joad family, like many Oklahoma farmers, has obtained job flyers claiming abundant fruit-picking work in California with high wages, offering the opportunity to rebuild their homes and start a new, happy life. After some discussion and preparations, Jim Casey and the Joad family, totaling more than 10 people, squeeze into a truck loaded with their belongings and set off westward on Route 66 toward California. In the chapters leading up to the Joad family's official journey into exile, readers can clearly see the overwhelming impact of the profit-driven modern economic system on the traditional sharecropping economy. The farmers cannot adapt to the changes brought about by industrialization and are driven away from the land they depend on for a living. As for those who have embraced the modern economic system, alienation is inevitable. For example, in Chapter 5 of the novel, a tractor driver is mentioned. In the eyes of the sharecroppers, this driver sitting on the tractor, wearing a mask, gloves, and goggles, no longer appears human but becomes a part of that monster, a sitting robot. It is only when he takes off his mask that they recognize him as someone who used to be part of the farm but joined the big corporations out of survival pressure. The villagers ask the driver who gave the order to demolish all the houses on the land, but they realize that there is no specific person to blame. Furthermore, upon deeper exploration, the big landowners represented by the banks and companies only superficially occupy a dominant position. They, like the driver trapped in the tractor, are also trapped in the web of numbers, order, and efficiency. During the period depicted in this novel, automobiles played a significant role in people's lives, driven by industrialization and consumerism. The Grapes of Wrath features numerous car dialogues, involving truck drivers, used car dealers, and people in the surrounding industries. Through their conversations, we can observe the close connection between cars and social class. Despite the Great Depression, companies specializing in truck transportation continued to thrive. Compared to the prosperous producers who had leisure time and could travel on the roads with dignity and efficiency, the cars of the migrants carried a heavy burden, constantly breaking down as they progressed on their journey until they could no longer move. The cars chosen by the migrants were initially marketed towards the middle class and even higher classes, representing an ideal and achievable way of life, emphasizing the pride and dignity of the possessors. However, with the arrival of the Great Depression, this American dream that was once associated with wealth, status, mobility, and freedom lost its former meaning. For the migrants, the highway did not symbolize rapid and free movement but was filled with unknown dangers. Although the highway and automobiles provided an escape route for the migrants, they themselves were still part of the modern economic system. Therefore, the fate of the migrants could not be directly changed through travel on the highway. Let's return to the story of the novel. After the Joad family leaves the farm and embarks on the highway, the spatial movement accelerates abruptly. In just one chapter, they pass through 6 towns, and the shadow of death suddenly looms. First, the Joad's dog is crushed to death by a big truck at a rest stop, followed by Grandpa suffering a stroke at the first campsite. The Joads encounter the Wilson couple and, with their help, bury Grandpa in the wilderness, risking breaking the law. The two families continue their journey together. As they approach California, Grandma falls ill due to the fatigue of the journey, but this is not the worst of it. One evening, at a roadside camp, a man claimed to have returned from California and shared his experiences there with the migrants, leaving everyone's hearts heavy. It turned out that the flyers distributed to the migrants were handed out excessively, indicating that the California farm owners could indefinitely lower wages. Despite this, many people still couldn't find work and could only watch their family members die or starve. Within the Joad family, signs of disintegration began to appear. In Arizona, the eldest son, Noah, suddenly decided to leave his family and seek his own path, while Rose of Sharon and her husband contemplated living independently once they arrived in California. The Wilsons, who were traveling with the Joads, had to leave Mrs. Wilson behind at the riverbank due to her worsening illness, implying that their outcome would also be grim. On the night road through the desert, Grandma couldn't survive, and when the Joads finally reached California, they had already lost 3 family members and their dog. However, they had no time to mourn. While secretly burying Grandpa, they maintained order and organization, with clear divisions of labor in their preparations, mourning, and eulogies. Yet, upon arriving in their dream of California, the farewells became hasty and chaotic because they didn't have enough money to pay for the burial. They had no choice but to leave the body for the coroner's office to handle. The pressing issue they faced was finding a place to stay. The Joads settled in a makeshift campsite near a bridge, planning to rest there and explore job opportunities. At the time, there were many such shantytowns in the United States known as Hoovervilles. These were gathering places for numerous bankrupt and homeless people who barely scraped by in makeshift shacks made of cardboard and scavenged materials. The things mentioned by the person in the previous camp were confirmed. This place was crowded with migrants, with an oversupply of labor, and everyone was enduring hunger. Contractors colluded with the police, suppressing the determination of workers trying to unite spontaneously against the infinitely lowered wages. In a confrontation with the police, Cassie volunteered to be arrested in Tom's place, and on the other side Connie lost faith in the future and left behind his pregnant wife, Rose of Sharon. To avoid the threat of the police burning down the Hooverville, the Joads didn't rest for long before hurrying back on the road. This time, they chose to travel south on Highway 99 to a government-run camp. Part 2. The Joad family, who had experienced numerous hardships, found temporary respite at this government camp. Here, people could pitch tents for a minimal fee, and those without money could work in exchange. Most people were able to find jobs in exchange for ample food. They had dedicated showers, toilets, and clean running water. People organized themselves and managed life in the camp collectively. During their leisure time, they even held dances for their own enjoyment. With the help of kind-hearted individuals, the men of the Joad family found temporary work, providing relief for the women and children. Even Rose of Sharon, who had been self-pitying, gradually calmed down. However, this utopian, self-sustaining camp life was destined to be unsustainable in the long run. In this camp, people found cleanliness, safety, health, and happiness. Their dignity, worn down during the long journey, was rebuilt. However, for the big companies, this meant that the migrants wanted higher wages, making it more difficult to dismiss them. Therefore, they tried various methods to infiltrate the camp and create chaos, colluding with the police to find excuses to break everything apart. Under the overwhelming external forces, the Joad family found it increasingly difficult to find work and sustain their life in the camp, so they had no choice but to hit the road again and search for opportunities elsewhere. At this point, readers familiar with the story of the Bible may notice that the novel, in terms of plot development, resembles a modern version of the Exodus. The protagonist, after enduring a perilous journey, should have arrived at the promised land of their dreams. However, the California depicted in the novel is not the Canaan flowing with milk and honey from the Bible but a testament to the endless hardships faced by migrants. Unlike the happy endings of traditional religious stories, the journey of the Joad family was destined to end bitterly. From Route 66 to Route 99, the reversal of numbers seems to hint at the cycle of disappointment and helplessness that repeats itself in the journey of the migrants. Once the Joad family hit the road again, they changed direction and headed north. Their truck started to break down more frequently. One time, while they stopped to fix the truck, they encountered a businessman who told them about a farm 40 miles away that was looking for temporary workers to pick peaches. They hurriedly made their way there. The living conditions at this farm were terrible, and the wages for peach picking were low, but they had no choice but to work. The money the family worked so hard to earn barely sustained them, and they couldn't even afford basic necessities like soap because the farm owners owned the general store, and everything there was priced higher than the market. One night, Tom wandered around the camp alone and unexpectedly ran into Casey, who had been separated from them before. Casey had been released from prison and was now a leader among striking workers. He informed Tom that the police were arresting striking workers everywhere. Subsequently, Casey was killed in a conflict, and Tom killed the attacker. After telling his mother about everything, Tom planned to evade the police on his own, but his mother insisted that the family leave together and find another place to work, picking cotton. Tom decided to hide in the nearby scrubland. There was no camp around the cotton field. Those who arrived early lived in large trucks with their wheels removed, while latecomers had to pitch their own tents nearby. Rumors spread that machines would soon come to replace manual labor in cotton picking. Those who wanted to pick cotton had to advance their wages to buy the bags from the employers. The Joad family was fortunate as they arrived early and had enough work to do, enabling them to have a meal with meat every day and new clothes to wear. However, their good days didn't last long. One day, during an argument with other children, young Lucy blurted out that Tom had killed someone, forcing him to leave his family and go into hiding. Before leaving, Tom had a long conversation with his mother, where they discussed Casey's words about every individual's soul being a small part of a larger soul and how everyone needed to become a unified whole to live a good life. Inspired by Casey's unfinished mission, Tom decided to rally the workers, uniting them so that they could grow their own food, build their own houses, even if it meant paying the price with his life, just like Casey did. After bidding a heartfelt farewell to his mother, Tom returned to the camp and discovered that his only adult brother, Al, had become engaged to a girl from the Wainwright family. With Al being the only one who could drive, the Joad family had to accompany the Wainwrights as they headed to another cotton field. Unexpectedly, they encountered a violent rainstorm that lasted for 3 days. The Wainwrights decided to leave the camp, and despite his family's objections, Al insisted on leaving as well. At that moment, Tom's pregnant sister, Rose of Sharon, went into labor. Ma Joad stayed in the truck to care for her, while Pa Joad went to gather others and build a levee to withstand the impending flood. However, their efforts proved futile. As dawn broke, the levee they had built was washed away by the rushing waters, and Rose of Sharon's baby did not survive. While Rose of Sharon and Ma Joad rested, Uncle John placed the deceased infant in an apple box and let it float away with the water, to cry out their wrath, to lie against the doorsteps, and perhaps they'll know. When it was time for breakfast, the water was about to engulf the truck's roof. Ma Joad made a quick decision and urged the family to leave the truck, wading through the water to escape. Eventually, they found shelter in a nearby barn on a hill. Inside, they encountered another father and son, with the father on the verge of starvation, sacrificing his own food to feed his child. At Ma Joad's signal, the entire family stepped outside, allowing Rose of Sharon to nurse the dying man with her breast milk. Part 3. The story of the Grapes of Wrath comes to an end here. At first glance, the ending may seem hasty, but in fact, Steinbeck's original intention in creating this work was not to provide a definitive conclusion, but rather to use writing to awaken people's consciousness and conscience. In the dialogue of the novel, Steinbeck faithfully preserves the vernacular characteristics of the lower-class farmers, and through rhetorical techniques such as parallelism and metaphor, he continuously builds and amplifies emotions with language that has a phonetic beauty, composing a history of the suffering of migrants for the readers. However, Steinbeck is not satisfied with merely recording the era. He wants to explore the underlying causes of this crisis and attempt to find a way to break the impasse. The Grapes of Wrath is a work filled with Christian-related imagery, but it dismisses the possibility of using religion as redemption from the very beginning. The novel contains numerous metaphors and symbols, the most obvious of which is the grapes in the title. The Grapes of Wrath is derived from a lyric that was widely sung by the Union Army during the American Civil War, in the song Battle Hymn of the Republic. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. In the context of the Bible, grapes symbolize hope and abundance. In the first half of the novel, Grandpa Joad describes the plump and juicy grapes of California on multiple occasions, and in his imagination, once the Joad family arrives in California, he will be able to immerse himself in sweet grape clusters and live a prosperous life with his whole family. However, as the journey progresses, grapes become synonymous with pain and despair, gradually evolving into anger that fills the hearts of the people. Preacher Casey is the only clergyman in the entire book, and at the beginning of the novel, he announces early on that he has given up his faith because he doesn't know which direction the Holy Spirit can lead the people. The image of Casey corresponding to a prophet cannot point the way for the migrants because the promised land ahead does not exist. Rather than empty beliefs, Steinbeck believes more in the idea of a common human destiny, transforming individualized I into socialized we, and he also believes in the empathic ability that transcends blood ties and nuclear families among people. It is worth noting that as the Joad family continues to move along the road, the internal structure of this family gradually shifts from a patriarchal system at the beginning to a construct dominated by the mother. In the first half of the novel, when they are preparing to go to California, it is the men who are making plans, and the young males of the next generation also play a role in strategizing, while the women and children stand on the porch behind them. Although Grandpa is old and senile, he is still the nominal head of the family, and still maintains the right to speak first. Ultimately, the decision-making power also remains in the hands of the men. As the Joad family gradually moves towards California, the male characters fall into a state of helplessness, and the decision-making power of the family gradually shifts to Ma Joad. When Pa Joad laments on the side that they should not have left their hometown, and believes that they have nothing now, Ma Joad comforts him that the situation will improve. When the men are at a loss due to the inability to find work, it is Ma Joad who repeatedly urges the entire family to hit the road again and seek new opportunities. Ma Joad manages the family's finances, balances income and expenses, and ultimately plans Tom's escape. Faced with the threat of floods, it is she who decisively leads the family to abandon the car and escape. Ma Joad not only takes care of the daily life of her own family but also harbors a compassionate heart for other migrants. In Hooverville, faced with the hungry eyes of other migrant children, she shares what little food they have with them, and later in the Big Flood, she urges Rosa Sharon to breastfeed a dying compatriot. In Ma Joad's view, the bond of family can extend to a larger group. At the end of the novel, the continuity between the two generations of women preserves some hope for this vision of one big family. Rosa Sharon, as Ma Joad's successor, takes on the responsibility of nourishing and nurturing life, completing the transition from daughter to mother with the act of breastfeeding. In Steinbeck's own words, Rosa Sharon's action is a symbol of survival. All of the above seems to indicate that in the survival system of the migrants, a matriarchal system can help people survive more effectively, and the compassionate power of motherhood becomes a haven for upholding human goodness and dignity. The image of the traditional mother is closely linked to nature, which also confirms Steinbeck's view of the relationship between humans and nature. On the surface, it is the arrival of mechanization that severs the bond between farmers and the land, but the damage that humans have caused to the land over the long years cannot be ignored or easily restored. In other words, in Steinbeck's view, the cause of the human survival crisis is not technological or institutional changes, but the ecological imbalance caused by humans themselves. If we look back at American history, we can see similar predicaments recurring. After the 1950s, with the decline of traditional heavy industry and manufacturing, and the increasing decentralization of the global automotive industry, the once prosperous old industrial areas, particularly the industrial centers of the traditional Midwest such as Ohio, Detroit, and Chicago, are no longer glorious. They have been dubbed the Rust Belt due to the rusting of a large number of abandoned equipment. Here, issues such as rising unemployment rates, wealth disparities, and racial conflicts gradually emerge. In the following decades, due to resource displacement brought by globalization, the relocation of local manufacturing industries, and the restructuring of global production capacity, more and more local workers fell into bankruptcy crises under the impact of mass unemployment, leading to a large outflow of local population. For those who couldn't leave, the depletion of resources and environmental degradation caused by years of excessive exploitation trapped them in a cycle of depression and turmoil. From this perspective, the manufacturing workers left behind by the tides of globalization share a fundamental similarity with the Joad family's experience many years ago. These profound observations are what sets Steinbeck apart from his contemporaries, and the attempts he made in the novel may still be worth pondering and learning from today. By deeply observing and embracing nature, helping individuals break free from traditional production and economic systems, drawing strength from the embrace of nature, and allowing the individual I to merge into a larger, organic community where all life harmoniously coexists. Conclusion. Here, the essence of the Grapes of Wrath has been interpreted for you. Let's recap the key points discussed in this session. The Grapes of Wrath is a representative work by Nobel laureate John Steinbeck, published in 1939. It is a prominent example of the popular social protest novel of the time. It revolves around the experiences of the Joad family, tenant farmers from Oklahoma, and portrays the hardships faced by farmers in various states in the Midwest of the United States. Beyond the main plotline of the realist subject matter, The Grapes of Wrath also focuses on the complex relationship between humanity, technology, and nature. This allows the novel to resonate with contemporary readers even after it has transcended its specific historical context. The novel does not simply attribute the environmental and ecological imbalances caused by humans, as well as the resulting survival crises, to the development of technology. In Steinbeck's view, only by achieving a balance between human development and the natural environment can individuals break free from traditional production systems and merge into a larger, organic community where all life harmoniously coexists. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.